India has a very vibrant sector, but we didn't have an institution doing research on the sector, nor was there an institution running programs and engaging with the ecosystem to build the ecosystem. And that's how CSIP got created 10 years ago.
There aren't enough institutions which actually look at a theory of change in a very systematic way. And for that, you need institutions to be built like CSIP.
And we took the idea of Ashoka's own journey and said, can we build a center of excellence that can then examine philanthropy at a larger level?
Global philanthropy is at a pivotal juncture and is rapidly evolving. On the other hand, as India becomes the world's fourth largest economy, I believe it is time for us to lead our own development journey, moreover to become a role model for the rest of the global south.
We were young 23-year-olds who wanted to sort of do some things, wanted to do something in the impact space. We did not have the financial capability also to do this. And here comes the Mother Teresa Fellowship, which allowed us to take care of ourselves through financial support and ensure we continue to do the work that we wanted to do.
I know that students are highly now getting started to become interested in the social impact space, and I think that's why a center like this is critical, because it ensures that people can learn more about the sector, and it has such experienced individuals that students can always go to them for opportunities, for learning, for research work.
Through our focus on knowledge, capacity building, and also convenings for that matter, we are focused on 3 initiatives through our Case Centre, governance and leadership, and data for the development sector. We would be able to play a key pivotal role in shaping the ecosystem in a way that the social sector is strengthened as India's growth story moves forward.
It is a lonely journey being a head of an NGO, and having a body like CSIP that you know is taking care of your needs and needs of the sector is very important.
I think the next 10 years, it's going to be the golden age in CSIP from a research, convening, and capacity building perspective. Will play a very, very critical role.
I'm excited about CSIP's work thus far. I'm also very much looking forward to the example that it's setting for the rest of the world, and look forward to the next chapter of its history.
I want to congratulate CSIP for 10 very eventful and productive years. We have now built an institution that is recognized as a leading player in the ecosystem.
As it's housed in a university, CSIP is a platform for the best minds in the country to come together and collectively decide what will it take to solve our stickiest problems, and then go do it. All right, I think we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon for those of you here from India. My name is Jeannie Upal. I am the Director for Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy here at Ashoka University in Delhi. And thank you so much for making time to join us. This is an important moment for social sector, for the capacity building domain of the social sector, of CSIP, of course. This is an online launch of the Case Centre, but before we get into it, I have been asked to do a little housekeeping. So this event is being recorded, and we'll be using an edited version for marketing materials. So if you don't want to be in the recording, I suggest you be in listen mode. If your video's off, it's okay. And if you have any questions, hopefully there will be time for Q&A. You can always type if you do not wish to speak. Everybody is, I think, on mute. So when we have the, when there's a phase of Q&A, we'll allow everybody to unmute yourself. We just want to make sure there's no background noise coming in. We have 90 minutes together, 3 segments. The first segment is going to be a fireside chat between Amit, Archana, myself. Professor Kash Rangan unfortunately couldn't make a last-minute health appointment. He was very keen that we should not postpone. He wanted us to have this launch event, and we have a recording from him, so he's going to share his thoughts directly with you. So the first segment will be the visions, the whys, and the wherefores of why are we doing this. The second segment is going to be a discussion of the fundraising case study journey. That is our first case from this center. And Krishanu Chakraborty, who is the head of research at CSIP, will be leading that discussion. And the last segment is a bit short, and I hope you all stay for it, because that's when Rekha from CSIP is going to announce the capacity building program, which is an integral part of this case center. That is how we put this knowledge out, and we build the muscle of how to write and teach cases. So please plan to stay for the next 90 minutes. For the fireside chat, before we get into the conversation, I just want to share thoughts to anchor the conversation. The case center that we are talking about essentially is a learning intervention. It is a pedagogical pathway to building sectoral capabilities. We talk a lot about capacity building. We don't talk much about the pedagogies of capacity building for the social sector. In that sense, it is a means to the end. That is the end goal. Normally, when you hear about a case center coming from a university, you think of a four-walled center inside a university, inside a department, with academics who write high-quality cases and usually taught within the university itself. This case center has been designed differently. It is not enough for us to produce high-quality cases. That is necessary but not sufficient. What is equally important for us is driving adoption through institutions where social sector aspirants are coming to teach, or social sector practitioners, the executive programs, are coming to learn. So the capacity building organizations or the learning and development, L&D organizations, become very important, critical. So all of that input has gone into the design of the case center. Over the last, I would say, 7 to 8 months, 2 reports have been developed. One has been published, one will be published, which also gave us information. It shaped the design of the case center. One was the impact assessment of learning and development programs from ATECF, which is now out in the public domain, which did what the name suggests, the impact assessment of learning and development, which has been around for at least 10 plus years, quite a lot of L&D programs. And the one thing that came out of that impact assessment report was the need of cases, good high quality cases that can be taught, and also a gap that there is a need for high quality cases, but there aren't enough of those. The second study, which was undertaken by CSIP, that report will be published soon after this event, that dug a little deeper into the case pedagogy. Why is it not happening? What is the opportunity? What is the gap? Why aren't we there yet? So a lot of the findings then, fed back into the design of the case center and influenced us to then have 2 tracks. And some of you may have read about this. And again, this may be a lot of detail. Just hear it out, because you'll run into the approach and the model again and again. There is a track of the case study, the knowledge itself, high quality, rigorous, backed by academic rigor, but not theoretical. And the second track is the capacity building program, where we intend that it's not just CSIP or any one team writing cases. We want academics out there across the country to be able to learn how to write high quality cases for the social sector. And we want trainers out there to be able to take cases that have been written and facilitate discussions. So that is the background, that is the backdrop. And against that, now let's get into the fireside chat. We have here Amit and Archana, who need no introduction. They have been, they play many roles, as I'm sure you all know. They are philanthropists, they are practitioners, they are champions of capacity building. Archana has actually worn even more hats. She has been a learner of the case method at Harvard Business School. She has been a protagonist through Jay Vakil. Professor Cash also needs no introduction. He has spent decades working in the social sector with a lot of India-based case studies that he has authored. He has also taught many capacity building programs in India through CSIP as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the vision, like why are we doing this with Amit and Archana. Before that, let's see, Rekha, if you can play Professor Cash's video on his point of view on why is this important and his own experience, because he's been at it for quite a few years.
art and science of case writing and case teaching is very, very appropriate for the social sector, be it India or elsewhere, mainly for the reason that through the process of conceptualizing, writing, delivering the case, having a discussion, we actually lead to building of robust frameworks which are useful for the practitioners. The social sector does not have the wherewithal and the money to spend on a BCG or a Booz Allen or a Larsen and Toubro or Tata Consulting or any of these kinds of big consulting services to give them an answer for the challenges they face. And in fact, their challenges are exponential because in addition to the challenges that corporates face, they also face challenges in terms of funding, the variations in the political environment, etc. What the case writing process does is it captures, in a nutshell, the 8, 9, or 10 pages of the case, what the challenges the organization or the protagonist or the senior leadership is facing in the context of the organization. And then when this is presented to other equal peers, similar peers of senior leaders of NGOs and leading development organizations, learning and development organizations, etc., then they put together some kind of a framework for how to solve the problem. The problem itself can only be solved by the organization because they have all the data and they have all the insight. But the framework is created, which then becomes the equivalent of the consulting report that a McKinsey might deliver. And this is done through this process of knowledge creation, generation, and this knowledge lasts much longer and beyond the organization because the framework is general. Many organizations, many NGOs can use it. So that's my whole vision. My whole vision is it's not just an academic process of writing a case, publishing it and putting it in a binder and saying, here are the 100 cases. It's more like, are these 100 cases being taught? Are these 100 cases being discussed? What frameworks are emerging from these cases? How are they being implemented? Is the practice improved as a result? So that's my vision.
So Amit, moving on to you, you've been a continuous champion of the capacity building sector for more than a decade, and you've seen the journey, you've seen it go through the growth curve, the cycles. Tell us a little bit about your vision for the Case Centre, the case pedagogy. Tell us, why do you think the Case Centre is important and why now?
So, Ginny, first of all, congratulations to you and the entire CSIP team on this wonderful milestone. When we helped set up CSIP, this is exactly the kind of initiative we had hoped one day would take root at the center. And just, I think, by way of a little bit of history, I think Archana and I started investing in the concept of capacity building well over a decade ago. And it was largely her experience as the NGO leader, which gave us some sense of the acute need to do so. And that need remains as much today as it did when we started the process. Over the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, we've had the privilege to, work with, I think, over 50 organizations on their needs. But we really pivoted to seeing how we need to invest into areas of high impact leadership development. Idea we really got from Cash, and we are very grateful to him for lighting that spark in us and helping build the ecosystem so that more organizations could benefit. Every now and then we pause and try to reflect on what we could do differently, given the whole sector keeps evolving, both on the donor side and the organization side, and what would be a better use of both our time and capital. What are the gaps that we should try to fill in the next 5 or 10 years? And this has meant vacating some spaces so new donors can occupy them and entering new areas which are the need of the hour. And that takes me to the topic of the day today. We think the time for the Case Center is actually now. We did a seminal study of India's leadership development sector earlier this year, and that gave us a lot of insights into the sector's needs and how they're being catered to. And we think actually the Case Center is a great opportunity to change how the sector learns in the future. A lot of insights that came out of that told us that there's hard-won experience in the field that's staying locked up in organizations or individuals. A lot of the learning is actually happening from global cases. And so this Case Center actually is about opening that and changing that, turning our best learnings into public resources so everybody can benefit from them, they can relate to them. Our vision is that this should really become a place that captures the how, the what, the why of transformation at scale in a deeply Indian context. There are a lot of difficult choices that leaders need to make. What has worked, importantly, what has not worked. So we can start codifying that, curating that into lessons, and then very importantly, start teaching them in our programs. I think we will move both faster and smarter, both as donors as well as importantly as NGO leaders. So I really see this to wrap up as a dual opportunity for the center to become a living library of great stories that help accelerate change. But also it's a center for capacity building for institutions and individuals to spread what you talked about in your introductory remark. How do we actually spread stories of change so that at the end of the day, the CSIP itself becomes a multiplier of social change?
Thank you so much, Amit. And indeed, your support for capacity building as well as CSIP is what has helped bring us to this point in time. Archana, you have so many intersections with capacity building. In addition to the work you do at Jai Vakil, you've also been a learner. I think more than 10 years ago, you were a student at the Harvard Business School Executive Program, which was case-based. You, Amit, and others at CSIP brought that program to India for many years, which was again case-based. Most of those cases had been developed by faculty outside of India, and now we are wanting to shift the paradigm. And to Amit's point, we're acknowledging that we should be able to write the cases on our own. Moreover, there's a lot of intervention models in India which just need to be harvested. We want to extract those learnings, codify them as best as we can, and then teach that knowledge to the other practitioners within India, perhaps even out of India. So from your vantage point, learner, supporter, champion, nonprofit, what opportunity and what value add do you see for this sort of an initiative for India in particular?
Thank you, Ginny, for doing this. I think the importance of this initiative is just so high that no amount of Amit or even Cash kind of talking to it is going to really do justice to it. So one of the things that I would start with is that in my own years of trying to work in this sector, I have found that stories stick far more than any theoretical knowledge that you may put out either for a donor or a peer or anybody else. So I think one of the most powerful ways to communicate stories, to remember things, is the art of storytelling, right? And therefore, I think even as a leader in the not-for-profit sector, I think there is some, we're just so caught up in what we do, we're constantly trying to fight this, that, and the other, that there's often not enough time to just step back and reflect. And I think when you make that time and you go into a class or into a session of this sort, it's not really only about you. It's like about hearing other people's stories, other people's journeys, and you're able to get so much context and perspective that so often you realize, this problem that was overwhelming me yesterday, today just being here, listening to them, I realize I'm not alone. And that gives you courage that no amount of anybody sitting with you and saying, don't worry, we'll figure it out in really do. So I think Case studies also enables that to happen where you contextualize your issues, you're able to relate to other people's challenges or dilemmas, understand their dilemmas, understand the trade-offs they made and why. So I think it is one of the best things that can really happen to the social sector as a whole. And if you ask me, having the case study, like you and Professor Cash said, is only one part of the story. The other part of the story is how are you going to take it out? Because you can have the best cases, but if they are not put out in a manner that can be consumed appropriately, accurately, and often enough, then I think we'll be defeating the purpose of it. We'll only be solving for one of it. So I think, and therein come your L&D partners, who I really think can do a great job of creating this platform where people come in to just step back and reflect and make this a practice for the sector as a whole. So it doesn't need to be for an individual or an organization. And when you layer that with lessons from India or stories from India, I think the whole learning and the context can be made so relevant to the leaders that suddenly, you're also able to see yourself in that too and walk away with a solution that kind of comes out from that learning. So I am really, really excited about this whole initiative that we're doing together, because I also feel when you create this protagonist in the room coming and telling their story, you also create a very safe environment for peers to learn from each other. Right? It's not just about the case study being taught in the classroom. It's also about the support system that you create through your peers when you're coming together to discuss the case study. And of course, when the protagonist comes in and is so authentic and vulnerable with their journey, I think you also feel like you have mentors in a system, and therefore you're not alone in this journey, because trust me, this journey in the social sector is hard, but being a leader here is quite a lonely space. So I think all of this coming together through your case studies in these learning and development sessions would just be so, so powerful.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So, Archana, there are a couple of things that you mentioned. I want to bring out the nuance of it. So, the case itself is a research-based product, knowledge product. The power of the case, I think I heard you say, comes out in the manner of teaching. So it isn't a lecture. There isn't so much theory as much as this is what the protagonist did. These were the circumstances. These were the trade-offs. These were the choices. These were the dilemmas. And the methodology of the learning itself is such that the student in the classroom, the learner, is almost sparring intellectually with the protagonist, who may or may not be in the classroom, but their story is in the case, plus they are sparring with each other. This is a peer-to-peer learning. And hence why the story of the protagonist, it could be a gender, domain-based NGO, it could be a different domain, but the context, the dilemmas, the learner then imagines what I would do in that situation. They can contextualize, and the classroom experience is very interesting. And you're right, the role the L&D partner can play is just mission critical. Before we go to the capacity building on the L&D piece, I do want to stay with the NGO, because I do believe that the nonprofit is a linchpin of this entire thing for two reasons. One is we're doing this for the nonprofit practitioner. We want them to learn from each other. This is a peer-to-peer learning mechanism. The other is we are counting on nonprofits to be the protagonists, to share all of the journeys, the decisions, the difficult moments that they experienced in doing what they did. This can create a couple of anxieties in the mind of the nonprofit. You've been through it. A positive anxiety is, it's a contribution to the sector. Others are learning from you. It's a good thing. The negative anxiety might be, people are going to critique what you did, because it's the whole point of the discussion is this is what they did, this is what we would do, but this is, da da da. What advice would you have to the nonprofits who one day could become protagonists in this initiative? How should they see this initiative? How should they participate?
That's a great question. So I think the first thing that I would call out to is that the organization or the individual should be very clear on what is their why for agreeing to do this case, right? Because clarity of that is almost imperative to how even the case is going to sound. Because I can tell you this from experience, both sitting in and listening to a great case as well as getting written about is a very humbling as well as powerful experience. So, to my earlier point, as a leader, we get sometimes so caught up in day-to-day activities. Yes, we may step back from time to time to just say, okay, this has been achieved, or this goal is, or this milestone has been achieved. What next? And we kind of build on that. But to do a case on yourself is almost like you're stepping back to look at the journey of the organization, or rather evolution of the organization holistically, right? What are the choices that you've made, and where has that taken you to? What are the leadership lessons? How have I grown? How has the organization grown? So in some ways, all of this also becomes like a legacy for the institute, right? Very, very powerful exercise is what I would say. And again, when you're doing this, if your why is very clear, I think you will land up saying, what were my lessons that I would like to put out so that it can help or benefit the next person reading it? So I think the lens shouldn't be, oh, look how cool I am, or look how many mistakes I made and got up again. But what were my real learnings? Which if somebody else reads, will save them from making a mistake, or will save them their own learning through, a particular way. So I'll give you an example, right? This is not just to a case, but it's also in the peer group. I have had so many invaluable pieces of advice given to me, either by a protagonist or somebody who's sharing their journey formally or informally. That are game changers for us. And I'll share one of them, right? When we were, Driver Team has been working with the government for many, many years, right? And there are points in that relationship where we're really struggling. And I remember being at one such point, and it was probably one low point for me personally. And I was like, questioning that relationship and the need for that relationship. And I have, I'm happy to even call him out, Raj from Lahi, who sat me down over a cup of coffee and he said, working with the government is like in a marriage. You know that your partner snores, but hey, that's not a ground for divorce, right? You just accept it and move on. So it's basically a mindset issue. He said, when you're going for a meeting with them, they are probably going to make you wait. Carry work with you, carry a laptop, carry a storybook. Don't let it irritate you. So I think these kind of learnings, sharings in any shape or form can be brought out so beautifully for the sector as a whole. And I feel if somebody else can benefit from your learnings, your mistakes, hey, that's impact. Unfortunately or fortunately, we don't call it out like that, right? Either to ourselves or to a funder. So I think that I feel is huge, huge impact. On the flip side, I hear you, Ginny, and it can be intimidating to go under a microscope like that. And you can have moments where you feel, you know what, I'm just not ready. I just haven't done enough. Maybe I should wait. And again, I think the power of a case is coming through from not necessarily perfection, but from being authentic, right? What were the hard calls that you made? What were the trade-offs? And what did that do for you as an individual, as an organization? I think that articulation and relation to answering your why is critical for an NGO. I think the NGO can also see themselves as being part of a system where you're creating knowledge for the sector as a whole, right? It's not about an individual. It's about how is your story? How are the lessons you're putting out? How is the journey you're sharing? Really making the sector as a whole build more confidence, be more aware of themselves, and solve for issues together. So at the same time, I feel it's the job of people like you, people like the case writers, to make sure that all of this is done in a manner where there are certain safeguards or those rails that you put so that we ensure that every case that we write does give the NGO basic dignity apart from accuracy and respect. So, if I had to sum up all of this, I think it would be so powerful to have these stories written, one leader, one organization, one story, or one place at a time.
Yeah, so well said. Far too many people that I meet who get into the social sector, they go in with a mindset that this is whatever training they have had, they go in and then reality hits them and they find themselves reinventing the wheel on so many decisions that have already been made by other more senior practitioners. And if only they could learn from them. And the idea here is it's not theory, it's somebody went through the journey, like you said. It's not that the decision they made was perfect, but it was the process of the decision, the dilemmas they faced. That's what a good case teases out. And yes, for the NGO, the protagonist, it is a service to the community. I would like to believe, and there's something we want to see happen in this case center is we would like, normally the cases are taught in a classroom where other practitioners are coming and learning. How great would it be if we could take the case back to the protagonist organization for the rest of the organization to learn? Normally, a lot of decisions are made by leadership, and the people on the ground are experiencing the consequence of the decision. How great could it be to have a discussion on this is why the leadership made this decision, and this is the consequence, and what's working, what's not working. So we have talked amongst ourselves about exploring the idea of the case being taught within the protagonist organization where the opportunity presents itself, or within the capacity building programs of other NGOs who are not necessarily coming to an L&D setting, and which is why we've also introduced language translations, because not everybody is going to an English speaking classroom. So maybe a Hindi version to be taught within the NGO community. Lots of opportunity, and we do want to explore some of them in the very first year.
Ginny, can I make just one point?
That's a great idea, Ginny. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go
Amit,
ahead,
I also
go ahead,
wanted
go
to
ahead, go
just add something to Ginny's, and then I'll give it back to you. So you're absolutely right, Ginny. That's such a great point. So two things I wanted to add to that. One is when the case study, when the Jaibaki case study was actually taught in the SPINIM class, the learning in it for me as a leader in an organization is immense, because you just suddenly have the best 100 minds in the country coming together and also kind of brainstorming with you in terms of, you know, the solutions or pushing you in some of the decisions. I think that lesson is invaluable. The second, of course, is you bring it back and do it internally, and we have it, you know, kind of like it helps induction and orientation for new people. But what I also wanted to put out is that we've had, you know, some NGOs as well as our funders send in their leadership teams to understand a journey of an NGO, especially where change management or succession planning from being a founder-run organization to now being professionally run is concerned. So your ability to enrich any conversation is so much more than it would be if you just spoke. So just wanted to leave it at that. Sorry,
For
Amit.
sure. Yes, Amit, you were saying.
I just wanted to amplify one point that Archana made. Since I have, you know, I've had the opportunity to straddle both worlds, the corporate world and the social sector, I can tell you that something we're very fortunate to have in the corporate world, which is, you know, access to studying best cases of both success and failure. You know, it just simply doesn't exist in the social sector to any degree close to what exists in the corporate sector. And so that actually is a big impediment to accelerating learning. And, you know, social sector leaders, unfortunately, because of being resource constrained, don't have the time. And even if they have the time to replicate going around individually to various organizations is often not easy. And therefore, one of the most important things that you can do through creating a knowledge bank of a large number of good, high quality cases, and then very importantly, having the learning and development partners go out and amplify them, is bring all that knowledge into the domain of people who can actually learn from those things and accelerate their learning journey and take decisions in a much more sensible manner. I think that is invaluable. And so effectively that investment in the ecosystem is critical. And therefore, this is a very high leverage point in the learning and development area, but which impacts the entire outcomes of a system.
Right. Continuing on that theme, Amit, you're right. The outcome of this entire exercise isn't just the production, but the teaching, the integration. And after conversations with even traditional academics and other institutions such as IIM that they've had a case center for decades, it became very clear to us that it isn't enough to figure out how to write cases. It is also important to teach the community how to facilitate a discussion. The power is in perhaps it's not even teaching, it's facilitation of the discussion. And this is important in academic institutions where young aspirants go to study for their postgrad. Perhaps more importantly, the adoption or the power of adoption is in those capacity building organizations where practitioners are coming to learn, mid to senior, no matter what level, because they can action it far more quickly than a postgrad who has yet to find a job in the sector. Tell us a little. So the capacity building program that Rekha is going to talk to us about, it actually has two types of a student, if I may call them that. There is the academic who is learning how to apply rigor to co-develop a case with the NGO protagonist. There is the L&D partner, a facilitator who's coming to learn how will I integrate this case into everything else that's going on in the program. And that is, we will hear Nikita in a little bit on how are they thinking about integrating the fundraising case into the fundraising course. Tell us a little bit from your point of view, how should capacity building organizations think about this? This isn't just here's a case, I'll plug it in. This is actually building the capability of those who are building capabilities. It's a different muscle that we are developing.
Yeah. Look, we've known for a long time that if you want to teach the area of management, doing so to the point that Archana made via storytelling is the most powerful way to relate to the audience. We've known that for a long time, which is why increasingly globally organizations, learning and development organizations have started moving more and more towards the case study method. Even in India, interestingly, the more progressive learning and development partners have tried to do that. The problem that we've had is that those cases, unfortunately, have been cases from the West. And so, I mentioned that we did a seminal study this year of learning and development organizations in India. We almost got a response on 50 partners. We then did a convening of all of them. It was interesting when you look at the results of that, of that detailed study, you realize one of the biggest gaps was actually that people said, people who we spoke to, the leaders, said that, look, there is this real gap where we want stories that we can relate to. And therefore, if people learning and development partners want to really connect effectively with their audience, then two things are really important. One is they must have stories that are relevant. And second is they must know how to deliver them, because that's what defines the best-in-class leadership development organizations globally. And therefore, I think this exercise is aimed at filling both those gaps simultaneously. And I hope we are able to do so in the years to come.
Excellent. I think we've gone through most of the questions that I wanted to do justice to. We have about 9 minutes, so we have a little bit of time for Q&A. If anybody has a question, you can now unmute yourself, or can they put it in chat?
Yeah, so maybe they can raise their hand and I can unmute them. Yes. So yes, I think there is one question, and that's by Manu. Yes.
Yes. What's the question?
Sorry,
I'll have to toggle screens. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just say, I think apart from having strong L&D partners, it's equally important to do something so that NGO leaders have access to the right case at the right time. many times during our internal meeting, I have struggled to find the right reading or example to set context. Help the team think about new possibilities. Sorry, Manu, is it any question here? I just see this is a
I think he has a point.
yeah.
Yes, I don't disagree with that point. And I think it'll take a time to build a bank of relevant cases.
Right.
My suspicion is probably 3 to 5 years. And eventually, I think even the field of leadership development in India will evolve. It has already evolved a lot since the time we started investing in it, but I can already see nuances. For example, you referred to a fundraising course. That's a very narrow area that we've invested in to just have people invest in, look at fundraising capability. I suspect like that you'll have a lot of courses which will emerge, which will be focused on just narrow horizontal or vertical skills. And there will be cases which will just talk to those narrow horizontal and vertical skills. I think that will be a journey. It will probably take 3 or 5 years to populate enough cases in each of the boxes that are important. And I would hope that organizations will come forward. I mean, a lot of my learning, for example, comes from being in the field. I just spent a weekend with Manu in fields of Punjab, and I learned a lot about the field of change and how it has changed since they got started. But it's only opportunities that maybe about how organizations are evolving. But I think for anyone who's thinking to know about how in Punjab is evolving from the big cases today, the hope is that we will do a good job of 3 to 5 years so that's when we'll happen.
I can share a couple of thoughts. So this is important. Manu, you're right. The bank, it'll take some time, but there are things we have considered which will help speed up the process, not speed up just for the sake of it. But so the capacity building program is meant to train those outside who have a passion for social sector, academics, L&D partners to write cases. So we made a very deliberate choice that it isn't one organization. It isn't just CSIP writing cases. We're training people, we're writing cases, plus we're training others to write cases. And over a period of time, we'll see the multiplier effect where this case, the methodology of what a good case looks like for the social sector is set. And now people know how to write it. And then CSIP can move into an editorial board mechanism where the case is written and we just do peer review, support, and we publish. So I would like to see that the number of cases grows year over year. It isn't just 5 or 6 a year. The other thing we considered this year is we took input to begin with from the L&D partners, and we asked, what are the thematic areas? What is the biggest gap in capabilities that you are already teaching or people are asking you to teach? So we have shortlisted some thematic areas which, we've all decided this is important, at least to begin with, and we expect to write cases on those priority areas. And every year it will be a little different. But agree, this will take time. This is an investment worth making because you do get a lot of value as the bank of cases increases. So thank you for that, Manu. I'm sure there are a lot more questions, but I think, is it time for us to switch, or Rekha, do we have time for another question?
I think Archana was making a point, yeah.
I was actually going to ask Manu a clarifying question. Was this question to the effect of we will study these case studies only when we are in an L&D class? Or will we also have access to these case studies when we're struggling and we can just come to CSIP and say, do you have anything on strategy, or do you have anything on HR, or do you have anything blah, blah, blah? Because I think that would be quite a powerful way as well. So I'm extrapolating and building on Manu's question. I'm not sure if that was his there. Leave it to you, Ginny, to answer.
Right. So eventually CSIP will have a repository of cases. It's almost like it doesn't matter now who's writing the case. There is a methodology for the case. The muscle on how to write cases is out there. And the cases then get published. This is not dissimilar from how other case centers, IIM, HPSs, there's a whole bunch of people writing cases. They just submit. And once it's approved and published, there is a repository. And that repository is then what you access to find a case at the intersection of governance and succession building, or at the intersection of communications or advocacy. So over time, we expect the repository to start becoming available to folks to find cases that they want to teach in that moment. Whether I think Manu perhaps meant that when they want to self-learn or they want to discuss within the organization, not necessarily going to a training program. But yes, the vision is that we build that repository of cases over time.
Okay, great. I have another thought by Aspire. I have to check the name, but you raise your hand, please, if you have any, if you still want to ask question.
Yeah, I can quickly jump in. This is Gopal here from Ashoka Changemakers. Thanks, it was nice listening to you, Amit, Archana, and Jenny. And I'm sure you're also keeping the language in mind because most of the NGO leaders are in those areas where maybe English may not be the first language. So just wanted to ensure that. And I think IDR has done a great job in the failure files one. So I wish they would have been in the room also today to see how Archana's point on how do we learn from the failures. So because that becomes very important thing. So just wanted to highlight on that. And at Ashoka, we do a lot of case building for our fellows, mainly into systems change. So would love to share that, Ginny and team, whenever possible. Yes. In fact, we have just developed 11 case studies on purely on systems change done by Ashoka fellows. So just to bring that point. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Over to you, Ginny.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll continue this conversation, and there is more information. The thematic areas, Amit, we have shortlisted for the next year, so we'll be sharing that along with the the announcement and the capacity building call for applications going live. More to come on that.
If I could just make one quick point, I think Gopal makes a good point. Ginny, you might know this, but the whole language issue is an issue that we have with ideas. They are one of our partners. We're very keen that to make sure that they accelerate the vernacular capability for the benefit of leaders at large. I think also what we should probably do, I think Manu's point has actually, and thanks Archana for clarifying it. I think it's worth thinking about how do you make cases more broadly accessible than just in the classroom? And do we use platforms like IDR, etc., or simply even the ability to download them from websites of CSIP as a way? And the 11, I didn't know there are 11 cases, for example, that Ashoka has on, you said systemic change, Gopal? Systemic change is the area of great interest for someone like me. I would, for example, love to read the cases, and I think they should be profiled on organizations like IDR's website.
Right. So I'll address just a couple of things. So language translations is part of the plan. There is a Center for Translation at Ashoka that we'll be working with to start with Hindi, like I said earlier. And I think I'm blanking on some other point you made, Amit. But so there's actually a lot of nuances.
Open access was the other one.
Open access. So we have imagined a couple of different kinds of outputs. There's a full-on suite of a case which comes with key teaching notes, which is appropriate for the L&D environment. There is also a version of the case which is more appropriate for open access. You download and you get what it is about. So the case outputs will be customized to the channel to make sure that in that channel, that case is best digested by the people who are coming into that channel. So online access, online courses, perhaps down the line, L&D classrooms. Our imagination is that there will be a version of the same case that can be consumed in that channel best. So excellent. I think I'm getting the signal that I should wrap this up. Amit and Archana, thank you so much for making the time. This is just the beginning. Even though we've been talking about it for quite a few months, this is the beginning. So all of your input is incredibly important. And I expect that the model will refine in the next couple of years. So thank you, Amit and Archana, for being champions and supporting us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege.
And now I think we are going over to Krishanu, is it?
Yes, thank you. Can we have the next panel, please, highlighted, Rekha, if that's okay?
Yes, working on it.
Thank you. And while the other panelists are coming on board, definitely more stellar, and I will really humble to introduce them to all of you. I'm Rishanu. I lead the research function here at CSIP, and we'll talk through what we have been actually doing now that we know the background from Ginny about what we want to do. So we have with us, Rekha, we also need Professor Sridhar on. Yeah, and then
I'm a little slow today.
no worries, no worries. And unfortunately, we have to let Ginny and yeah, go off the highlight. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So now, as you can see, everyone, we are here at the second part of this launch. And I think that listening to all the questions and the discussion, this is really unmasking to a certain extent, or putting a light on what does it really take to write a case, and then think about teaching it in an environment of where what we are discussing right now, which is the LND one. So with me, we have a few people which I will introduce. But before that, let me just quickly talk about the case and give a context of what we're talking about. So one of the areas where I think that everyone has different type of struggles is fundraising. If you are in the social sector, you have encountered the beast of fundraising in one way or the other and have tried to solve it, and hopefully, have found your ways around it. But the amount of codified knowledge around how to fundraise, and especially for professionals whose day job at the end of the day is about fundraising, is almost next to nothing. Here is where ILSS comes into play, because they have a course which is targeted purely at fundraising, and we have someone from ILSS who will talk about it. And we then tried to actually write a case on the fundraising journey, keeping the Ashoka University fundraising sort of success story to a large extent in mind. So that's the protagonist over here. But this is something that we have been now doing for about the past 6 odd months, and I'll introduce the team in a while. And then hopefully for all of you who are listening in, will identify with parts of this journey, right? So there is a role to play if you're an L&D partner in a case study journey. There is a role to play if you are a protagonist in a case study journey. And there is a role to play if you are thinking of writing a case, which is, we have the authors over here also. So without getting too much into the details, let me quickly introduce Professor Ankur Sarin, who is with the Public Systems Group at IIM Ahmedabad, and is one of the lead writers of the case. Professor Ankur Sarin is well known to who have been following the management sciences for some time, and his work includes investigations of the effects of social and economic inequality on welfare outcomes of children, and understanding the influence of technology on the social and economic life of the marginalized. Alongside with Professor Ankur Sarin, we also have Professor Sridhar Sethuram, who is a visiting faculty at the Department of Entrepreneurship at Ashoka University, but also has a bunch of other hats. He's an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus, and he's a private equity professional with now over 25 years of experience, if I'm not wrong. And he's also the co-protagonist of Ujjwal Impact Advisors, who is a pro bono ecosystem intervention to build a community of social entrepreneurs that has catalytic alliances with large philanthropists and CSR donors, and among other actors. Welcome, Professor Sridhar. And finally, we have Nikita. Nikita is the lead for the Center of Excellence for Fundraising at ILSS, and they run this really interesting course on fundraising every year, and obviously also holds the India Fundraising Conference, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, which is again going to come out in February. Before ILSS, Nikita was also with Google.org, the philanthropic arm of Google, and she spearheaded Google India's CSR strategy and grant making. She is trained at Harvard Graduate School of Education and is an alumni of both the Gandhi Fellowship and Delhi University. So great team to have to write the first case, right, on fundraising especially. And I also want to call out Radhika Kak, who is in the audience today, and is a case writer with us, and has been with the Harvard Business School case writing team for many, many, many years. So let's get into the meat of the thing. So first, with this context that has been set with the previous panel, and now we have Professor Ankur with you, I think that it would be great from a case author's perspective, for example, if you can share a little bit about the very basics, like what a case study is really all about, and you have been using this in your course for quite some time. You have been in the B school environment quite some time. And I think that it would also be useful to tell the audience about how typically a case study is actually used in the B school pedagogy. And then now that you have also partnered with a lot of social organizations, you are writing this case with us. What do you think that both methodologically and pedagogically things will change when we try to move the case from within the boundaries of a B school to social sector organizations to learn and use and integrate, and especially with the L&D organizations that we have today with us? Over to you, Razvan.
Thanks, Krishanu, and congratulations to the entire CSIP team for making this happen, and very grateful to be here. Much of the context, as you said, has already been laid out, and I'm just going to add a few things to that. So starting from this question of the challenges on writing a case, and especially I think we have to be, in a sense, specific about writing teaching cases, which is what we are attempting to do, right? So yes, we are trying to gather stories, but as a case writer, I can't narrate the story entirely from, say, my perspective and with my interpretation and judgments. I really have to first understand the whole story, and then I have to take out elements so that I leave many things open. So, for instance, I can't pronounce an organization, or I can't even see the organization as necessarily being successful and sort of overtly lay that out in my case. And this is related to the methodology that comes to be used when we are actually teaching the case. So, of course, yes, we learn from stories, we learn from what others have done. But the real magic of the case study is the fact that knowledge is being co-created in that classroom by the facilitator and the participant and the students, right? The participants or the students. So this is, in a sense, that I am not, as an instructor or even the case writer, I'm not walking in there with sort of the storehouse of knowledge here to spread it. And that's the other method. But in fact, what we are saying here is that the knowledge in different parts, in different ways, already rests with the participants, and the facilitator's job is to sort of draw that out, get each one to have a conversation, a dialogue with each other, and then something emerges, right? And that's the reason why I think all of us who've gone through sort of learning via the case method have really walked out of it saying, wow, now this is something that's going to stick, because it was not a one-way communication. It is as if everybody walks out taking some ownership of what has been created, right? And we all know when we have ownership of something, that's when we sort of really value it a whole lot more. So that's sort of, broadly what I would see in terms of, what even a case writer needs to do, what a facilitator needs to do. And I think to your question about what needs to change, and as Amit rightly mentioned, I mean, this has been done in business schools for a very long time. There are, folk who have a whole lot of expertise in doing this. Now, what is it going to take in the social sector to be able to do this, right? And the social sector is a very complex space. I mean, just, the corporate sector in some ways has a bottom line well defined. We don't have that in the social sector. There are multiple outcomes that are always being chased. There are so many more complexities. This is a space that, forget failures, I mean, sometimes does not even tolerate blemishes, right? So how do you bring that out in a manner that is respectful? But moreover, in my view, some of the biggest, the key critical challenge is actually going to be how are we going to get facilitators? How are we going to get the right facilitators who both understand in some ways technical aspects that perhaps we are interested in, co-creating in that classroom, but also have a deep understanding of the social sector, the complexities of working in it, some understanding of also the geography, the particular cultural context in which the organization is located, right? And that's a fairly demanding ask for facilitators, right? But this is a journey that must be traversed. And as has been rightly pointed out, this is a journey that needs to be traversed if we want to be creating knowledge and in a manner that sort of we start learning from each other, which currently, as has been very, pointed out, is not a key attribute or characteristic of the sector. Right? So I'll just pause there. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Ankur. Like really enlightening. I'll come back to you, but before that, let me just like quickly shift to Professor Sethuram. So, Professor, we had the good fortune of like sitting in one of your classes where you are using a case, and really thankful for that. So, Nikita, I, and Rekha, we all sat through, and also Meenal from ILSS. I think that a lot of people in this room, unfortunately, so might not have had that experience, right? But right, from you, who is a practitioner and also wears a sort of a teacher hat and uses cases, can you let us know a little bit more about your experience of using cases like while teaching, and the connection that you always try to make with maybe some sort of a management theoretical or a practitioner oriented concept? What are the challenges that you face when you are trying to put together like what case need to be what case need to be taught, and then what concept need to be taught through that particular case, and your personal experience that you have? Over to you, Professor Shidhar.
Thanks. I'm honored to be here. I usually avoid the limelight, especially in the presence of Amit, who's been my guru on impact, and so many founder entrepreneurs whom I have learned from. So it's really an honor to be here. On an overarching theme, and I've been a student of how people learn. You call me professor, which I don't hate to be called one. I'm a student on the floor. Is that I think the way AI and technology have disrupted the science of learning, how people are really teaching themselves various capabilities, has also changed dramatically in the last 5 years. I can see that a lot of people are now preferring to learn offline in asynchronous mode from various options available, and wanting the classroom to see how they can apply their frameworks and the theory side, right? Otherwise, most people nowadays are quite bored with the usual old way of teaching theory in class. And cases, I think, are a very interesting way of leveraging what technology and AI has to offer to build capabilities within students of schools as well as in terms of professionals. In terms of challenges or the way one uses cases, I will again talk from three perspectives. One is the instructor or the facilitator. The other is the customer, who's the student or the participant. And third is the ecosystem side. If I look at the instructor or the facilitator side, when I signed up to do this, I didn't realize that he or she has to become a showman. Okay, it is almost like a director there sitting. This is Shah Rukh Khan who's directing the class and figuring out. And for becoming the showman, the instructor has to get into the soul and the mind and the context of the protagonist or the problem that is being faced. And that's a big challenge. And in the later part, I'll also talk through possible solutions to that. The second, I think, which I think Professor Akkur faces with most students, especially in IIM Ahmedabad, is how to get the participants to prepare for the cases, read the cases, and come up front, right? And the case methodology requires that people come with hypothesis as to what could be the possible solutions that you need to take. And in the class, you discuss among all of the people and figure out what is the right solution, right? And in most, and at least in India, I found it a struggle for getting students to prepare for the cases up front and come into the classes. The third, I think, is a bigger challenge, especially in an L&D kind of environment, is how do you ensure the learning outcome is stuck? Every case has a learning outcome. And how do you ensure that the participants have taken away the 2 or 3 learning outcomes and are going to use it further in their life or in their when they go back to work, right? If I look at it from a participant's perspective, interesting amount of challenges for them. The first challenge that I've seen is how do you speak? Okay, especially when you go into the vernacular side, I find I'm an introvert, so I can appreciate with them. But a lot of people are very hesitant to come out with their thoughts, and you need to figure out a way of getting the space to be comfortable, people to be comfortable to expressing what they think are stupid thoughts, but a great value addition to the class. And again, that is a very interesting way in which you have to solve for. The second, I guess, is case study requires a lot of reading, and Indians unfortunately don't read, right? You require to read the case, first of all, then you have some reading material, and then you come up with some hypothesis before class. And I think that is a very, very interesting challenge to it. The way I have at least dealt with, I've done now about 8 cases, and the way I teach cases is, again, use back what AI and technology can offer to you, right? So one of the first things that one does is that you mandate that you use AI. Okay, so you ensure that the class uses AI to solve the cases. You give the learning outcomes up front, and they come up with the solutions up front. So some people have started giving the solutions, saying this is the ChatGPT solution for the case, and that's how you actually solve the language problem too, right? People who are vernacular can actually use a lot of other ways to appreciate the case and come up with the solutions. The second very important thing is the more than the case is the teaching note. Okay, and we realized it the hard way, in the sense that the teaching note almost has to give possibly a minute by minute script for the facilitators to make it as easy as possible. I was quite petrified to know in Harvard that you can't have your own style of teaching. Almost every class is scripted. I don't know whether it's true or not, but then I took off Harvard of my dreams to teach. But you really have to script it and equip the lecturer or the teacher with multiple ways of learning outcomes, including videos, which are not related, but will trigger a lot of thoughts in that. The third one, and especially in an L&D kind of a thing, is Indians are very competitive. So it's nice to break the class or the thing into 4 or 5 groups, get them to submit, and ensure that the submission is public, so that people are actually learning from each other and prize. They like prizes, right? So they if you have a best prize, I think across classes it comes in very well. The fourth, and which Archana was mentioning, I think the protagonist is extremely important. And you need to have technological ways of getting the protagonist into a class, not in terms of speech, but in a fireside chat, where people are actually asking them questions that they need to get answered. And I find the learning outcomes from a fireside chat much better than any of the classes that I have taken. That entire conversation, heart-to-heart conversation of the people. And last but not the least, in terms of learning outcomes, again, you use technology, the Google Classroom or any LMS. If you can just put in one question, as which every participant has to give, saying that from this case, what is the learning outcome that you will apply to your organization? And make that again as a discussion forum, probably the learning outcomes will be much more different. So I think it's an overcomable challenge, and you have to actually use technology, AI, videos, and different ways of pedagogy to overcome the challenges. From an ecosystem perspective, I think, and this is the reason why I'm really thrilled to be involved and investing time at CSIP. One case is not going to be make the change, right? You will need to have a platform which has cases across stage of organization, across sectors, across functions. So you have a multiple set of problems that instructors have to use. And I'm sure CSIP, as Amit said, is going to take a lot of time. But over 3 to 5 years, I think if you build a great level of cases which indicate problems that people have faced, I think it will be a great way to help the social sector. One of the observations that I've seen with the impact sector is people are always reinventing the wheel, which means that they're all making the same mistakes again and again. And possibly that will be the greatest contribution. If you can minimize the mistakes that others have made, it will be a great value addition to the sector. And that's my dream for 3 to 5 years. If CSIP and team have a set of, say, 150 plus cases like HBS, has probably that will be a great contribution to the sector in terms of capability development. Those are my thoughts on the case method, but I don't think there's any other solution. It's an important solution to solve the capability issues that are there in the sector.
Yeah, no, thanks, Prof. I think, before I go to Nikita, one of the things that we are also trying with this particular case is to also create a little bit of more multimedia oriented content along with the text. One is like also reduce the text a little bit. I mean, to Professor's point that it becomes harder and harder now to go into 30-page cases and 20-page cases and expect everyone to read and then do the homework and then come in. So we are also trying to see like how less of the textual burden of the case that we can do. So hopefully we'll succeed on that. But apart from that, we're also trying to now do almost like a video-based storytelling based on interviews and hopefully a podcast that should be able to. So that's a part of the package. Obviously, the teaching notes are there to facilitate. And a version of the case that is at least transcribed into Hindi. So all of these are in the pipeline. But let me move to Nikita, right? Because Nikita is inside an L&D organization running a course that is well established right now and is definitely in the position to have a different view than at least Ankur, Sridhar, and me, who are deep into writing the case and really believe in the power of the case. But without, I think this is also super important for the group that it is here because a lot of you are either L&D organizations yourselves or have been in courses that L&D organizations run and have a view of that. I think Nikita, it would be great if you can just run us from your point of view, like what the journey has been, what is the goal that you have set for your course? Where does the case fit in? How have you seen all of the discussions happen? What are the challenges that you have already faced? Like, what you are looking to while you are looking to integrate this particular case into the particular, point in your longer course. And just like give us a flavor so that at least L&D partners here and the others are much more comfortable that this can be done.
Sure. Thanks, Krishanu. And it's great to see the Case Centre formally launched today. So congratulations to everybody, first of all. Speaking of the case at the ILS's fundraising program, right? Context is we launched the program in 2020. We've already had 10 cohorts graduate. And I think an enduring challenge that we've had through this time is something, Amit and Archana were also alluding to, which is that we've traditionally depended on a lot of Western resources for the teaching that we do in our programs, right? Like, I think over time, we've been able to create certain kinds of resources for our learners, but it's been an iterative process. We haven't had ready access to materials that can, facilitate that learning for our communities. And over the past year, we've spent a lot of time thinking about what that should look like, what resources would be helpful. And one clear direction that we needed to take as a center was to have case studies, right? Cases that our learners could access. I will say that, through the last 10 editions, we've had our own versions of trying to make stories happen in the classroom, right? So we bring in a lot of practitioners that definitely share their reflections, what that journey has looked like, and so on. We've made attempts to distill and document learnings from organizations like, let's say, a CRY or another education foundation, many organizations that have tried some very specific strategies towards their fundraising goals and found success in them. But why we were excited about undertaking this journey of, co-developing these, a decision case to begin with was, I think the methodology is unique in that it, offers an entry point, a very unique entry point as a learner, wherein you're not just reading the story or, just distilled insights, but by way of reflecting on the dilemmas of the protagonist and the organization, really trying to problem solve with the protagonist in that moment, right? And with your peers in the classroom. And that reflection takes you definitely 5 steps further in your learning journey, right? Because you're not just absorbing what somebody else did, you're also actively co-creating that learning in your head and contextualizing it to your organization to say, if I were doing this, what would that look like? So what the journey then has looked like for us is, first of all, to, think through it with you folks to say who to document, right? And we'd already been talking about the Ashoka story within the program and knew that there are some key lessons that we would love to document, which made it an apt choice for one of the cases that we brought into the program. And then to say, what are some points, areas of inquiry that will be relevant to this audience, right? And that really that resonate with something that's somewhat universal in their journeys, right? The kind of challenges. So with the Ashoka case, we did talk about things like building a team that's going to be the sales engine for the organization, or, what does it take to create a robust donor engagement strategy? The interesting thing about these discussions, as we thought about our constituents, right, the learners, the interesting thing I think was, and feel free to add, we also constantly talked about what will keep the essence of the learning from that journey while, not letting us get lost in some of the details, right? Now, it could be easy for, let's say, an Ashoka, Rocket Learning, any of the big organizations. It could be easy for a nonprofit to say, but they are so big and they have so much already going for them. What do I learn? So to also frame some of that journey in adequate detail and with, some level of information that allowed for organizations at different points that journey to relate with, what can I take from this, right? While the context may be different, but what does still relate with my challenges and, I can take back. The last thing, of course, being the facilitation and the teaching notes, which also we've been talking quite deeply about. And there, I think what we recognize about audience like ours is, unlike a B school or, the Young India Fellowship or a bachelor's program, these are adult learners. These are professionals that are already carving out time in their schedules with a lot of challenge, right? And so we know that the general level of preparedness with pre-reads or any other resources tends to be different from students who might have a grade implication, by the way, when they are not adequately prepared or responsive. And so how to respond to those challenges by making the case accessible, which is to say, what should the length be? You talked about some of the multimedia assets that could go along with the case to make that absorption easier. But then also in the class, right? What could it mean in terms of setting the context to get people going, even if they have only had the chance to skim through? And once finished, how do we help them stay with that reflection? So in the program, it's important that we follow it up with some degree of reflection and workshopping to say, this is what I'll take for my organization. This is what, the action items over the next 3 months, 6 months, 3 years could look like, based on what I'm learning from this. So I think a lot of discussions that are still alive, but all in all, there was a gaping hole in the program for a case like this to come in. And we're glad that we've been able to, make progress with you folks on it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nikita. I think I think that hopefully one of the things that comes out and it's evident to everyone that this is really a journey that is collaboratively crafted between the case authors, the protagonist, like in this case, the protagonist, obviously the Ashoka team who actually fundraises, and the L&D partner. Because unless and until we are able to situate a case that needs to be taught for a particular audience in a particular point of time for a particular purpose, nothing else really matters before that. And I think that that's where, at least for me, the anchoring of ILSS has been really, really useful to be able to, for us to also almost demarcate that, okay, this is how, and this is our line of questioning, this is our line of investigation, such that the stories and the learnings actually come out. We'll discuss 2 more questions, and then I have to definitely hand over to Rekha to do the rest of the announcements. And I'll throw this open to all 3 panelists here. So I think that while we have definitely understood the teacher part of it, the writing part of it, the need of it, and obviously the L&D partners sort of view here. The other most important part is the NGO, the SSO, the social purpose organization, whatever you call, the protagonist on which a particular case is written or will be written through this case center and beyond. And I wonder that why would you think, and any of you can answer, is why do you think anyone should be interested in this? Is it a net positive game for them? Are there downsides? What will they get? Obviously one part that I think Ginny already spoke about is that there is them getting access to the case and bringing it into their own sort of learning and development capacity building within the organization itself. But what else that someone might be motivated by? And Professor Ankur, Sridhar, you have both have sort of worked with a lot of these organizations. So also curious to hear from both of you specifically.
I can just take a quick stab at this. Sorry, I think besides everything else in terms of, being contributing to the ecosystem, I think it's an opportunity. From what I've found when I've tried to work with organizations, many organizations end up seeing this as an opportunity they have had to also reflect on their own journey, to get somebody sort of, in a sense, external, independent, documenting that journey, laying out and probing them in terms of what dilemmas they faced, how were decisions made. I think that exercise itself can be an enriching one. I really don't think organizations should come into this process thinking that this is a way of sort of gathering recognition. That's the part that is the tricky part, that because we want to bring out the dilemmas, the challenges, the potential bad calls also, right? So that's, I think the point that, okay, what is it? How do we bring organizations into this? Because it is a very critical one.
I think for the protagonist also, it is an interesting way to access as things get discussed, right? It's a very interesting way of fundraising or resource raising, right? As the cases and as their organization gets more popularized among people who could either fund them or could join them, I think it's a very interesting upside that they can have. And I think Professor will agree with me, protagonists come to some of the cases which they have discussed. and they go away probably learning much more than probably the students do. Into even the current problems, they get a very, very fresh perspective. That's been my observation with all the protagonists.
Yeah, I think plus one to what both of the professors said, the reflection that it enables for the organization and community building almost, right? When you're meeting learners that are discussing your case or taking the case to your stakeholders to tell them this is what the journey has looked like, that would be interesting. The third thing that I notice among many organizations, and I think our sector is so generous, Krishanu, is there is a genuine intent to say, how do I contribute back to the ecosystem, right? I've traversed a journey, I've learned something, and I'm always a little bit taken aback by just how many organizations are actively thinking of how do I take this back to the sector? Other people could learn something from it. And I'm also beginning to see organizations almost having that as part of their KRAs to say, from an ecosystem development lens, what do I contribute back? So this method becomes a great vehicle for that as well, in addition to the other things.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I'll just end with one broader question. I think that while we are really focusing on this set of artifacts that will come out of a particular case that will get taught in a particular L&D context for a particular course for a particular audience, we are also definitely committed to bring out public version of that particular the case, at least in the public domain. And I think that one of the things I'm very curious to see if one of you can shed lights on is that what does that really mean? Because generally a lot of the cases that we know about in the Harvard Business Schools, for that matter, or other case centers are paywalled, right? I mean, they are hard to access, and this has come out again and again, even in our research that Ginny was mentioning. That we did a brief sector study, and we'll send the report to everyone after this call. That just accessing knowledge has become a problem, right? So, do you think that public benefit of putting knowledge out there also has a role to play? And if yes, then how organizations should look at incorporating that?
I mean, I think even from the comments that we saw earlier, right, when Manu was talking about having something to access when they are talking through certain strategic questions internally, etc. There's definite need, right, for there to be public versions, some public goods, and there can be choices made, right, about what level of information is useful as a general resource versus what applies to the classroom. But if your question is about the need of it, like 200%. And how to make that happen is, I think we also, somebody talked about also hearing from nonprofits as to what they would find relevant, right? And so just a little bit of that data gathering to inform what are some key challenges thematically, what should we prioritize as public goods versus, what probably stays within a certain context. Having versions of it, again, that are accessible. So language translations is one thing, but what sort of media or what formats also lend themselves to, wider engagement and consumption? Those would be some questions that I would think about.
My own thoughts on this is that knowledge is always good when shared. Okay. And as long as you get the credit, I think you should probably dream to become the HBS of cases. As long as they can give you credit for every download, I think your funders will be very happy. I don't think it'll be a money-making exercise. But I think that's between you and your funders of your cases. And I think they will be happy if there are 1,000 people using a case rather than 10 people giving you $100 a case, is my thoughts.
No, I mean, no disagreement there. I mean, the challenge is going to be how do you make the public case publicly accessible, but the case can't stand on its own, right? There is, as Sridhar mentioned, there's a teaching note, and there's the facilitator. So the case is not sort of a complete product by itself. So, but at the same time, I mean, if you look at HBS, why are these cases so popular? Well, yes, they are paid, but then access for an educator is very simple, straightforward, even to the teaching note, to a sample case, etc. Right? So I think, yes, it is in principle, no disagreement. How do we navigate these issues is something to be thought about.
Absolutely agree. Probably curated access, people who go through a curated list and you give them access, but the access is free, is what I would think.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think definitely a problem that we'll have more information about, like probably this time next year, as we go through the program and everything, and produce many cases and try to see like what versions of that are up for public consumption, which definitely it would be. I mean, thank you, all of you to making the time itself, and as rest of the participants on this call. This was definitely this is a journey that's not sort of stopped. So there's a commission case. We have been developing this with ILSs, with support from ILSs, and these are types of cases that we'll keep on writing along with the program that Rekha is definitely going to talk to you about. And I think that you will hear more about this case publicly down the line, once we know more about how it has been taught, how it has been received, like what we learned from teaching this to a set of L&D organizations. So more on that to come in the next few months. Thank you, and over to you, Rekha.
Thank you, Krishanu. Thank you, Ginny. Thank you, everyone, for joining and being a part of it. I think it has been a enrichful conversation around the Case Center. I am really proud to say that we are one of a kind of a Case Center specifically dedicated for social impact. Having said that, we have heard multiple times that there is a need of such cases, there is a need of such stories to be told. And of course, there is a need to understand and even teach these cases. So we have a community of practice where multiple stakeholders are all coming together. On that note, CSIP is happy to announce that we have built a program, writing cases and teaching cases. So we are really happy that we have this program. The program is designed to basically build the capacity of academics, practitioners, research to write and teach high quality and decision focused cases for the social sectors. Participants will not, also get exposed, but learn directly from the expert faculties. We have Professor Kasturi Rangan from Harvard Business School, and we have many more faculties coming for this course. Over the course of the program, participants will develop their own cases rooted in the realities of social impact work, exploring themes of leadership, fundraising, governance, strategy. These cases, as Ginny mentioned, will later become part of CSIP growing case repository. Our aim is very simple: to make the social sector's lived experience visible, teachable, and actionable. For these, the program case writing and teaching program, we will live our application on 13th October. We have 3 stakeholders for this program. We have early stage career academics, we have protagonist NGO, and then we have capacity building partners. So capacity building and for L&D partner, capacity building and for NGO, it's an invite based. So you can reach out to us. We will share the details with you over the email. And for case author, which is early stage academics, the application will go live on 13th. So please keep looking for our applications. We will definitely share the brochures, every detail by email. Give us some time. I would say just one day, but yeah, give us some time. Having said that, before I close, I want to take a moment to thank everyone, our panelists, participants, CSIP team for making today's launch meaningful and insightful. Your presence, engagement, and shared ideas really helpful. I'm really looking forward to collaborate, learn, and shaping each other. Before I close, I just want to know if anyone has any last thought. I'll take as a no because you guys are on mute. But yeah, but no, thank you so much. Please keep looking for our website and social media. I will share more details about this program. Ginny, over to you. Any last minute thoughts, Ginny?
No, thank you so much for making the time. I will just repeat one more time. We're calling it a launch. This is really the beginning of a journey. And my invitation to everybody is to lean in. It is a multi-partner, multi-stakeholder. By design, the teams that are writing cases, Rekha said, is the academic, the protagonist, and Sridhar and Ankur have told us again and again, it is an act of co-creation. So what we will design is the process, the model in which these case teams work independently and they co-create the case. And then the co-creation happens again in the classroom. whether it's a physical classroom or an online course or somebody's downloading. So it is going to be a journey, and we are here to get your input. And the questions today are also very valuable. So we'll continue the conversation. This is just the start. We'll share all of this on social media, email. So just watch out. And if there is something we haven't shared or if we haven't communicated, just ask us. So we are also here to learn. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and have a good day.
Thanks. Congratulations to the team and all the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.